My sister-in-law is purposefully making me go crazy due to my schizoaffective disorder in order to sabotage my life. I found out she was lying about me, and they ended up backfiring on her later on. I realized that whenever I was around her, the whispers started getting louder, and I could actually make out what they were saying. Stuff like, unalive them all, or rope that bee, which really started to worry me. My hallucinations have always been kind of rough, but they always seemed focused on me. Stuff like, I hate you, or you're a failure. Never the other stuff. So I was worried they were getting worse on me. Then I started hearing voices from other rooms. It sounded like someone was talking from other rooms, and anytime I'd ask Sue if she heard anything, she'd claim not to. The weird thing is, my audio hallucinations are different from what I was hearing. My hallucinations have always sounded female, whereas the voices from the other room have been male. My voices also sounded like they were whispering right next to my ear, while these ones sounded like they were taking place somewhere else. The weirdest part was that what the voices said sounded a lot like memes from 4chan. They like to message people from the schizophrenia subreddit and tell them that they are hiding in their walls, and that's exactly what I was hearing in the other room. I started searching for the source of the voices around the house, but Sue got scared and started telling my wife I was going crazy again. I know it looked bad, but my hallucinations sound and say different things, so I was making sure it wasn't something else. Today, things got worse. My medication ended up being missing. Like I kept it in the kitchen at night, but the bottle was gone this morning. When I asked Sue if she saw my medication, she got really scared and hid in her room with the baby. Her mom and dad came over and they weren't necessarily hostile with me, but they blocked my way and took Sue to their house for the day. They called up my wife and told them I had been harassing her and going crazy at Sue, and they feared for Sue and her baby with the schizo around. I really think Sue is messing with me. I've had trouble taking my medications in the past when my symptoms were at the worst, but I really like this medication I was on, and I'm nervous about waiting a few days for more of it. The problem is, I really could be hallucinating everything. Yeah, it's different from the other hallucinations I had in the past, but hallucinations can change with time, and if I were becoming delusional again, not like I'd really know it either. I really don't want to be scaring Sue, but it just doesn't seem right. None of this stuff happens when my wife gets back home from work, only when it's just me and Sue at home. I didn't think she'd be capable of doing stuff like this, but everything about this just feels wrong. I'm not sure how my wife is feeling about this. I haven't had a chance to talk to her in depth about it, and what little we did get to talk about, I couldn't really tell how she was feeling about everything. She's been my biggest cheerleader and supporter through all of this, but her family is saying my symptoms are targeting her sister and nephew now, so I'm not too sure what's going through her mind. I just don't know what to do. Ever since this started happening, my symptoms have made a comeback, so I have heard my usual hallucinations from the stress of everything. I don't want to be a monster, and I was thinking of maybe getting myself into the psych ward, but I just have this feeling that this is just Sue screwing with me. My delusions and hallucinations have always been spirit-related, not targeting anyone specifically. And if it's Sue who is doing this, why in the world would she be messing with me like this, if she truly believed I was dangerous? I've thought about kicking her out to see if the whispers really came from her, but it'd be hard kicking her out. Her parents live in a one-bedroom, so they don't have room for her, and she has no money at the moment. Thankfully, I was able to get my medication in about 2 days, so I wasn't without my antipsychotics for too long. When my wife got home, we talked about what's been happening. I talked to her about Sue when I was alone with her, and even let her read over my previous post. My wife is a rock star, and she took everything I said well. We acknowledged that it could still be hallucinations because we didn't have proof. But my wife had her suspicions about Sue and told me that it was not outside the realm of something Sue would do. My wife told me Sue had talked to her earlier in the week and told her I had not been taking my pills. My wife was confused by this because I tend to take the pills in front of my wife. I had a hard time with taking pills when I was first diagnosed and still having delusions. She had assured Sue that I had been taking my pills and thought it was just Sue being extra paranoid. We went and searched for the pills one last time, but they were gone. We decided not to have Sue back over anymore. My wife didn't like the idea of her sister and nephew being homeless, but she took to heart about what was said on the post and decided it was for the best with everyone involved. I'd been making good progress for a while, and she didn't want it to go away with Sue around. Of course, when she called up her family to tell them, they were pissed. Her parents screamed at her for choosing her husband over family, and later her sister called her up crying about how they were going to be homeless soon because the parents weren't going to let her stay there for too much longer. It hurt seeing my wife being caught up in this, and I'm not going to lie, I almost relented about Sue staying with us. But my wife assured me that this was the right decision, so everything was quiet for a few days. I didn't have any of the new audio hallucinations with Sue around. Let me tell you, it was a relief. I can't say I was totally fine. Some of my old delusions were making a comeback, mostly spirits and hauntings. But I felt more relaxed at home and was feeling good with her gone. I took the time to call up my doctor, and we had an emergency appointment which made me feel better moving forward. So this happened about 3 days ago. My wife's family waited for my wife to go off to work and came over to our place. The first thing I noticed was they actually brought a moving van. I don't know if their plan was to move me out or move more of Sue's junk in, but there they were, moving van right in my front yard. I texted my wife to let her know what was going on, then answered the door. I did not let them in. So basically, the dad comes up to me all aggressively and tells me that, as a family, they decided I was too unstable to live at home anymore and to pack everything up. We're having you committed. I told them straight up that wasn't happening, and I wasn't going to go anywhere with them. The mom went on a rant about how I was so unstable, and they weren't going to leave their nephew with someone so dangerous. I told them that Sue wasn't staying here, so there's nothing to worry about. The mom tried to switch it up and to sweet-talk me then, saying that with my mental health on the decline, they were just so worried about me and were going to take me to the hospital for my own good, and even said afterward that I could live with my family until the nephew gets a little older. Not even after I get better until the nephew gets older. I told them again, this is my house. I was not going anywhere. Sue was never staying over again, and they needed to leave my house before I called the police. They laughed, which just pissed me the hell off. And yes, honestly, I should have called the cops, but between having schizoaffective disorder and me being a black man in an argument against an old white couple, I didn't like those odds of me ending up being the one getting arrested. I did text my wife that her family was trying to have me go to inpatient care, which made her leave work right away. So to shorten this up, we had a screaming match, and it basically boiled down to this. If I didn't agree to move out for the safety of Sue and her kid, they would call up my landlord and let them know about my serious condition and what type of dangerous person was living at the house. They also implied that they were ready to have me involuntarily committed, and I quote, with all the other crazies, if I fought them on this anymore, and it was better to go with them now, so that I would be taken into one of the good places. Backstory here. When I got diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, my brother let me move into the house that I currently stay at today. We pay rent, but rent's at a good rate because he wanted to make sure I had a good place to stay. We've told her parents this before, multiple times even, but I guess they forgot this one little detail. So I told them straight up, my brother is my landlord, and if I go, Sue still won't live here, ever. If I go to inpatient, she won't live here. This situation will never end with her living at this house. That shut them up, and they remained dead silent. They looked at me like I had just killed their dog. They tried to say a few more things, but at that point it just kind of fizzled out, anticlimactically. Sue and her parents left afterwards. My wife came home not too long after her family left, and she was pissed. For context, my wife is a 5'4" tiny woman. But boy, was she mad as hell about what happened, especially going behind her back to do this. Cue more calls, more fighting with her family. She stood by me and told them to stay the hell away from me, and I greatly appreciate that. I just know it's killing her on the inside about not being able to see her nephew anymore. Before this happened, her family was supportive of her and very close, so it just blows my mind that the situation turned into this. She's decided to go no contact with them for now. So that's where I was at, not doing the best mental-wise, to be honest, and I might end up in inpatient care anyway, the way things are going. I keep getting paranoid that they are going to take me away somehow, but I'm trying to remain calm with everything. Like I said, none of those new hallucinations when Sue was around, but with the stress of everything, I feel like I'm constantly surrounded, and I'm going to be taken at any moment. I've talked to my doctor again, and we have a plan in place, but I really don't want to end up in inpatient care if I can avoid it. Makes it worse knowing my wife will be left alone without support, which makes me the most pissed off about this entire situation. Update. I found out what exact destructive lies Sue told her parents, but firstly, after 2 months, my mental health has been okay. I'm still trying to find the right antipsychotic for me. It's been trial and error lately. I can have one that works pretty well, but ends up raising my liver levels or sugar levels. All in all, though, not too bad. Voices are still down to a murmur at best. Delusional states can be tough, but I still have my wife and other family for support. As for my wife's family, it's a mixed bag. My wife didn't talk to her parents for a while, but eventually she started talking to her parents again. I don't blame her. They are old, and age is starting to get to them. She gave me the option to keep no contact, but I wasn't going to do that to my wife. Don't get me wrong, contact is low and still not back to what it was, but they aren't bothering me. From what my wife tells me and what she can piece together from her parents, her sister Sue had been kind of pumping up her parents against me for a lot longer than I thought. From what they were hearing from Sue, they thought I was a lot worse than they thought I was. She had told the parents that I had really gone off the deep end, talking to myself and carrying a knife around the house, screaming at the top of my lungs, complaining that the government was after me. She even tried to say I was aggressive towards her son, which none of this was true, obviously. It took a while for my wife's parents to trust that she was in fact okay and not in any danger from me, but they eventually started to believe her. I think it helped by the fact that Susan lost complete interest in me, or in the situation once the idea of her living in this house was off the table. Don't get me wrong, I'm not forgiving them for the crap they put me through. The fact is, if they had called the cops to get me that day, I could have been in serious trouble. I just can see why they suddenly went crazy on me if Sue was just feeding them stories upon stories of me going crazy and threatening her and her son. I don't like it, but I get it. My wife feels somewhat responsible for them, but the contact is still low and they haven't even seen each other physically since the altercation. She is sad about the situation. She has never seen that side of her parents before, so it's hard for her sake, as long as they stay the hell away from me. I do hope my wife and her parents can repair their relationship. Probably not what some wanted to hear about her still having contact. But my wife has given me a lot, and if they can have a relationship together again, I'm not going to stand in the way unless it's necessary. As for Sue, my wife is hardcore no contact with her, and that relationship is probably good and well dead. We only know from her parents that Sue is still living at their home, and that she might be getting back together with her ex. All I can say is good luck to that dude. Some good news for us, though, is that I was finally approved for disability. I got really lucky. Like really lucky. Because sometimes you have to wait years to get approved, and half the time have to go to court to prove your case. But it only took a year for us, and now I can contribute some income so my wife doesn't have to work as hard anymore at work. I got back pay from my approval, so along with paying off a few of the heavier bills we had, I also bought my wife a new camera. She had sold her old one when I had previously lost my job to pay for bills, so it was one of the first things I bought her with the money. So all in all, things are going well. I'm hoping this is the last update I have to make on this situation. Thanks for listening.